First to the UK, where Prime Minister Liz Truss has resigned, becoming the country's shortest-serving Prime Minister. A process to choose a successor in the Conservative Party has begun. Truss has been under severe pressure from both within and outside her party at 6 weeks on the job. She was forced through a massive U-turn on her key economic policies. Two senior cabinet ministers quit in less than 1 week, and by Wednesday night, a disorderly vote in Parliament meant her position had become untenable.
I came into office at a time of great economic and international instability. Families and businesses were worried about how to pay their bills. Putin's illegal war in Ukraine threatens the security of our whole continent, and our country has been held back for too long by low economic growth. I was elected by the Conservative Party with a mandate to change this. We delivered on energy bills and on cutting national insurance. And we set out a vision for a low-tax, high-growth economy that would take advantage of the freedoms of Brexit. I recognise, though, given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party. This morning I met the chairman of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady. We've agreed that there will be a leadership election to be completed within the next week. This will ensure that we remain on a path to deliver our fiscal plans and maintain our country's economic stability and national security. I will remain as Prime Minister until a successor has been chosen. Thank you.
So joining us now from London as we discuss Prime Minister's resignation is the rising correspondent John Cookson. Great to have you, John. John, pretty much Liz Truss is toast already, but a lot of people are arguing that the Conservative Party is toast and they should call for a general election because they've got no mandate. The mandate they're using is Boris Johnson's mandate, who's in the Caribbean, coming back to the UK now, by the way.
Good morning, guys. Great to be on the morning show. Well, yeah, the big story, certainly across the newspapers today, is Boris Johnson's possible dramatic return 2 months after he was kicked out of office. He's currently on holiday in the Caribbean in a $5,000 a night hotel, looking at airline timetables and finding how quickly he can get back to London. So there's been no sign yet, and one report said that he's going to fly into Gatwick Airport, which is close to London, sometime tomorrow. But who knows with Boris Johnson? Some of this stuff you couldn't make up, and the whole thing is becoming a bit of a soap opera. The reason why he's flying back is because the two main contenders for the leadership have to be nominated by Monday because the Conservatives are wasting no time in finding a new leader, which is expected to be exactly a week today. And the Conservative Party 1922 committee chairman has set the bar very high for the nominations. They must get 100 MPs voting for them, which, sorry to say, rules out some of the minor candidates, if you like Kemi Badenoch. Kemi, of course, from Nigerian parentage, although she was born in London, she spent a lot of her time growing up in Lagos. She's put her hat into the ring as a contender, but she's not going to get 100 MPs on her side. The other contenders are Penny Mordaunt, former cabinet minister, and also Rishi Sunak, former Chancellor of the Exchequer. Now, Rishi Sunak way out ahead as far as the favourites are concerned, and some people are suggesting a dream ticket might be with Boris Johnson in number 10 and Rishi Sunak in number 11 as Chancellor. But, this is all for the birds at the moment because we just don't know. So there will be a new Prime Minister, leader of the party, Prime Minister in place by next Friday. The Conservative Party members get the final vote on it. The two main contenders, that's those two that have gone over the 100 MP support threshold, get voted for by Conservative Party members, and the new leader and Prime Minister known by next Friday. Look, it really is essential that the things move very quickly because Britain's economic state is pretty poor at the moment. So, yeah, the big story today is Boris Johnson, known to his friends as Bojo, might be making a dramatic return.
Okay. By next week, Great Britain will have had 3 prime ministers within 2 weeks. Okay? From Boris Johnson to Liz Truss and whoever emerges next week. There, oh there. Famous phrase. But do you think that the Tories can recover from this? That's one question. And secondly, what do you think of the international reaction? Okay, Macron says, oh, well, we've lost a partner. Joe Biden says we've lost a partner. Russia says good riddance to the disgrace of a prime minister. What do you think of that international reaction? Beyond the fact that you are having 3 prime ministers in 2 weeks.
Let's deal with what you asked me earlier about a general election. Look, the Labour Party and other opposition parties can call all they like for a general election. It makes them look good amongst their supporters, doesn't it? But the truth is that the only people who can call a general election are the Conservatives, and they're not going to do that. They have an 80-seat majority in Parliament at the moment, got for them by Boris Johnson back in 2019, and the Labour Party is so far ahead in the polls, it will be a landslide win for Sir Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, if an election would be called, say, for tomorrow or next week. So they can talk all they like about a general election, but there's no way that the Conservative Party are going to call an election, because it'd be like turkeys voting for Christmas. They'd be out of office. But you know, it's healthy for the debate. It's good for the country, but it ain't going to happen. At least probably until the earliest in the new year. And let's be honest. Why would the Labour Party take on all the troubles that the Conservatives have on their plate at the moment? The cost of living crisis, inflation running at 10%, the war in Ukraine. Secretly, they may be hoping that, in fact, the Conservatives can get the country through this difficult period, and calling for an election is doing them no harm in the meanwhile. As for international reaction, I've seen a lot of foreign newspaper coverage poking fun at the British system and Liz Truss out of office, and 3 prime ministers in 3 years. But these are mainly left-leaning newspapers, and they have no love of the right-wing Conservative Party. So we need to bear that in mind. Biden wishes Truss well, but she and he were not fellow travellers politically. So I think international reaction is interesting, but domestically it's got no impact at all. As for the Conservative Party, it could well be finished if they can't get through this difficult period and get a new leader in place. Then they will be out of the next general election, which is scheduled to be in 2024, and that will cast the Conservative Party out possibly for a generation. It's an old party, 200 years old. They've been in office for 12 years in the UK. It is time for a change. It's bad for democracy to have the same party in charge for so long. So to some extent, that will be a good thing. The Conservative Party might regroup into different sections. There may be 2 breakaway groups, political parties out of the Conservatives, one centre-right and right, and the other centre-left Democrat. So interesting times, as always, in British politics.
I mean, John, but they've always been these breakaways. I mean, if you remember, an offshoot of what happened in the 90s under the John Major era was what led to, even the 70s, pretty much, 80s, was what led to the Eurosceptic wing of the Conservative Party that morphed into the Brexiteers, today and all of that. So they've always been those, breakages as regards that in the party. But the problem with the party, a lot of people argue, is that there is no talent, as it was, no new wave talent. There's a dearth of talent. So how's the Conservative government going to fix this? And that's why they've hemorrhaged, in fact, 3 prime ministers in the space of 6 weeks, How are they going to fix this at this point in time? And it's because of the dearth of talent. That's what they're talking about, Boris Johnson. And concerning Labour and elections, as we speak today, nobody that will be elected as prime minister has the mandate of the people. 60% of the people, according to a poll recently, said they don't want Liz Truss. Isn't it fair to give it back to the people to make their decision at this point in time? I mean, they can have elections in just 6 weeks. We took more than 6 weeks to have the last leadership struggle in the Conservative Party. We could prepare for general elections in 6 weeks.
You make some good points there, but look, think about it this way. This country is in crisis at the moment. I've listed the reasons before, not least the cost of living crisis. What the country desperately needs is stability, and the markets need stability. The pound has been in free fall, so has the FTSE index. It's bad, very, very bad for the country to have instability. A general election will be like dropping a rock into a pond. It would have enormous impact. Surely that is not the way forward, or at least that's what the Conservative Party are saying. And as I said earlier, the Labour Party and other opposition parties can call for a general election, but do they really want that? Is it in the country's best interest? I would argue not. To call a general election now, and all the ballyhoo and the uncertainty that's going to cause in the money markets and the damage to the pound, very, very bad idea at the moment to have another general election. And there will be a general election in 2024, which is not very far away.
Okay.
So
Tom.
yes, you talk to the people, but opinion polls. The real opinion poll is a general election itself, but I would strongly argue that a general election at this point would cause so much instability in the country, it would be very detrimental. Okay,
Daily Mirror today is saying the British people demand general election. That's a front page story. Saka Starmer, the Labour leader, is saying that the British people cannot afford another experiment in, number 10 Downing Street. So maybe he's calling more or less also for a general election. But let me ask you, is there a positive side to all of this? I've seen some commentaries, some people are saying, Liz Truss, she has made history. She will be a legend. The last man that survived in that office within a short period was George Canning. He spent 119 days. Okay? Now she has done just 44, 45 days. By next week, maybe 50 days. All right? And some people say she has made history. Under her watch, the Queen died. Under her watch, the pound fell. Under her watch, the economy hemorrhaged. Is there any positive side to this? What's next for Liz Truss? Elizabeth Mary Truss.
Liz Truss, look, she's basically a good person, but politically she was lightweight. I was in Downing Street when she walked into Downing Street. What was it? 45 days ago now. It seems like a lifetime, but that's what she did, and she seemed uncertain. She seemed like a rabbit trapped in the car's headlights. What has she done positive for the nation? Look, her heart was in the right place when she wanted to bring in steps to ease the burden on the British public of sky-high power bills. The average family paying between $2,000 and $3,000 a year for electricity and gas. She took what she thought were the right steps, but it was the presentation of it and the basic Mickey Mouse economics of what she was proposing, which was not properly thought through. So, yes, she's going to be a footnote in history. Some people joke that she's going to be a quiz question, who was the shortest serving British Prime Minister. Of course, there'll be all of that. But who knows what she's paved the way for, because we have a very dynamic, fluid situation in this country at the moment. but what has she done which has been good? I can't think of anything off the top of my head, except that she had a proposal, her heart was in the right place, but she didn't think it through properly.
All right, real quickly. So we're looking forward to the fiscal, report and the budget now on Halloween Day. How is that going to pan out? Who's going to handle all of that? And there's messaging out there. But I think the last argument I want to put in here, John, for a general election and the fact that you said it will cause a lot of uncertainty. When is best to have a general election except for a time of uncertainty? You remember at the thick of the Brexit conversation, Boris Johnson took the bull by the horn, prorogued Parliament, even though the Supreme Court said it was wrong for doing that, and called for general election because he needed to make tough decisions that he needed to get the people's mandate for. So if Boris Johnson could do that in the thick of Brexit, prorogued Parliament, dissolved it, called for general elections because he needed mandates, isn't it time for whoever is going to bring Britain out of this mess to get the mandate of the people by calling for general elections? Isn't that a simple argument?
It's a simple argument. Well, I'd throw it back to you and say, well, back in 2019, 6 million people voted for the Conservatives, and they got a thumping landslide, the biggest in 40 years, and that was only 3 years ago. So the Conservatives would say that is a mandate for the term. Now, who is going to take care of the budget on the 31st of October? That falls to Jeremy Hunt, twice in the cabinet, once as Foreign Secretary, once Health Secretary, very experienced, safe pair of hands. We don't know yet what he's going to propose, but the city is looking for some assurance that the public spending will be curbed, and that's not going to be popular, especially, for example, if the national health is to be deprived of funds. And he also needs to get inflation under control and to liaise with the Bank of England, who will surely put up interest rates to try to keep inflation down and protect the British people. But on the other hand, of course, increased interest rates will be bad for the general public as far as their mortgages are concerned. So it's a difficult balancing act for him to take. We don't know the detail yet of what he's proposing, but as I say, he's a safe pair of hands, and I imagine that what we're going to hear is nothing too radical from Jeremy Hunt.
Okay, John Cookson, what is clear is that at the end of the day, the lettuce won. The Daily Star lettuce won. Liz Truss, bitter end. Our own lettuce at our own end has waited. What's next? Will the people who chose Liz Truss be trusted? Can we trust them to choose a better leader? And would it just be better for the Conservative Party to just bring back Boris Johnson and just manage this crisis? 3 ministers in 2 months. That's a lot.
Well, look, I mean, Boris can win this election for the Conservatives, but he has to get the nominations first, so we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. And he really scares the Labour Party and other opposition parties if he gets the nomination and if he becomes party leader. So beware of Boris, I would say.
Okay, thank you very much, John Cookson. We'll see who gets the 100 Prime Minister votes from MPs. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, victims and other participants in the protest have made recommendations on how to deal with wounds created by the nationwide demonstrations. Arise correspondent Obadeoye covered the Lekki Tollgate Memorial March and a symposium afterwards.
The young Nigerians who were displaced by the police at the Lekki Tollgate converged on Victoria Land for a symposium branded as EndSARS Memorial 2.0. It was an opportunity for victims of police brutality before, during and after the 2020 EndSARS revolution to share their stories. They all agreed that the Nigerian police needs deeper reforms to bring them to par with what is expected of modern police system. For these young Nigerians, the police need to wear a human face.
We were there, we were harassed, they shot out tear gas, we tried to pressure the government. Why are you using tear gas? This is a systemic problem. You know, police issue has always been a systemic problem in the sense that, you know, they keep doing the same thing they do over and over again. Protesting is the right of individuals. You don't need to shoot, you come with live tear gas and all this thing. It was very wrong, but as you do, are trying to achieve closure, just like my colleague Dabira and Lawrence have said, we must achieve closure.
What are the police saying? So that we don't pass wrong energy when we see police on the road, we think, oh, they are going to beat me and arrest me, I have to retaliate. We have seen videos of people suffering because they are afraid of the police, and we are not supposed to be in that kind of society. We have to fix our country. We, the youth, have to get involved. We have to get involved in politics. We can't fix this country on the fence.
This is time we are calling on all responsible policemen in this country to stand up and challenge the status quo within them. Stand up and challenge the bad eggs within you. Why do you just look at me, profile me in a different and a negative way? Why can't we just look at our citizens and automatically feel like these citizens are fundamentally good people?
While reviewing the gains of the EndSARS protest, attendees of this symposium say although the uprising achieved some of its objectives, there are much more to be achieved.
The deafening silence is alarming. As a nation, you cannot just watch people's brothers and sisters die and not give them justice. They don't deserve that.
Lessons learned, but those lessons have to translate into meaningful actions. First of all, the way the EndSARS protesters were treated was not right. We all know that. Lives were lost. That was very unfair. And there's still no clarity on how that has played out. That's one. Two, the causes, the reasons for why this went about has still not been implemented.
There is still that atmosphere of oppressiveness and high-handedness, you know, and really making people feel a sense of hopelessness. There's a large air of hopelessness that is hanging around all of us.
We still have the systemic problem of police brutality still on. We still have the systemic problem of police still harassing people still on. The police have not always also been psychologically evaluated to start doing the right thing.
Part of their recommendations for the healing process to start in reality is for the government to establish a Truth and Reconciliation Committee.
We are asking for a kind of Truth and Reconciliation Committee. We need to have a closure. We need to have a judicial team of people that advocate between the masses and the Nigerian police or the government.
In October 2020, many Nigerians took to the street to protest rising police brutality and called for the disbandment of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad of the police, popularly known as SARS. Officers serving in the squad were notorious for extrajudicial killings and gross abuse of human rights. After days of protest, the government announced the ban of SARS. But has the ban brought an end to police brutality in Nigeria? That is a question millions of Nigerians are asking. Oba Adeoye, Arise News, Lagos.
Dr. Bati, a lot to say about all of the incidents of yesterday?
Okay, yes. I mean, yesterday was second anniversary of the EndSARS protest. Yesterday, we dwelt on it at great length. We talked about what government has done so far, about the 5 demands of the protesters. And we noted that not all those demands have been met. We noted on this program that there are persons that are still in detention who have not been released. That is wrong. We noted that there are persons whose accounts were frozen, whose fundamental rights were abridged, whose accounts, bank accounts, have not been released. We noted that many states of the Federation have not provided any form of closure on the matter. What we probably did not add yesterday was also to commiserate with the families of the policemen, security officials, who were also part of the tragedy. Because we saw footages 2 years ago of families of policemen who were attacked, policemen who were killed, police stations that were destroyed. But all of that would not have happened if we had in place good governance, if we had in place an enabling environment for the due respect for the rights of everybody, whether they are persons in uniform or out of uniform or ordinary civilians, as we are otherwise known. The second issue was that yesterday we praised the Lagos State government, that Lagos State was in the front line in terms of compensation, in terms of trying to take care of the problem, even where other states of Nigeria, about 10, 11 states in the north, said it was not an issue, that their problem was not EndSARS or police brutality, that their own problem was simply, terrorism and banditry, and that they didn't think that there was any problem with the police. Well, there's a problem with the police. We continue to establish that. But when the Lagos State government comes and those other states who have helped, I think we need to raise the issue about businesses that suffered. There were innocent persons, who suffered from that crisis, whose businesses were destroyed and who were targeted. Yes, Lagos had a committee to address that, but it was a nationwide thing. People who suffered collateral damage. What did anybody do about those businesses, about those, buildings that were destroyed collaterally? And finally, 2 years after, has anybody called to order those public officials who fueled the crisis, who perpetrated the crisis, who were negligent in discharging their responsibilities? We have not had anything in that regard. And as I pointed out yesterday, we were told that the Inspector General of Police disbanded SARS, yes, and also asked that police officers should go through a psychological evaluation. We would also like to know the outcome of that exercise. Because the problem identified, as the report by Obafemi Adeoye pointed out, talking to persons who know the subject, has not disappeared. Are those officers still in the force? Have they been rehabilitated? Have they gone through any retraining? Is there any assurance that the Nigerian police force would be an efficient police force, which it is not, unfortunately?
Right, sad one that happened. We call for those demands to be met. And what are those demands? Improvement in welfare of the police, training and retraining, psychological examination. But you wonder, has that psychological examination been done? No. Because when you see what happened on the ground yesterday, journalists were harassed, tear gas canisters fired. It shouldn't have degenerated that way. And it was very condemnable what happened yesterday. It was 2 years memorial. It shouldn't be every time we get to use force. The argument of the police that they were climbing the toll plaza, but they have to degenerate that much that people were injured. Our driver in Arise was injured a year before last. Last year he was injured. This year he was injured. We all remember, and we saw on camera, how the police was dragging with our media equipment with our very firm Femi.
Adefemi Akinsanya.
We all remember that incident. We all remember how Sheiton was pushed around and brutalized by the police. Femi had to stand their ground. Should it be that way? Obviously, psychological examination has not been done. And police need to learn the way to treat crowd better. That's why we called them out yesterday. We also commiserate with police officers because we saw the effects of this protest in Lagos and other parts. How police officers were killed. They have families too. We commiserate with the families. And we hope the needful is done to support their families. Because those men too, those police officers who were Nigerians that went out that day and they met their untimely deaths. But we should not forget what has happened. We should try as much as possible to bridge the gap and let peace reign. And a lot of people died in EndSARS, and I was shocked that the vice presidential candidate of a political party came out on air yesterday, said that the word massacre was debatable. In fact, I think we need to start defining terms in this country. What is massacre? Killing and brutalizing of many people. Were many people not brutalized on that day? They were brutalized leading up to that day. So why is the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party, I should say, saying that it is debatable? The facts are on ground. Did the panel of inquiry look at it? Let's call a spade in this country. That's how we build a better country. And speak truth to power, not caring wherever it is. So I'm calling on the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party to have a rethink about what he said. You know, people died. Abadioye interviewed some of the victims yesterday. Interviewed some of the mother that said she'd not seen her child. Let us do what is right. All we want is a better country. And the police should learn to, treat people right. Also, we must also learn to listen to our young people. This is yet another election cycle. How can we do better if we don't come together? Because all of us, all the stakeholders in this, we always forget something. That we all share one thing in common. A common heritage. We are all Nigerians in the first place. So my commiserations to all lives lost, the police. My commiserations to business owners, that their businesses have never remained the same. I was talking to one the other day. The damage was much around Circle Mall. Took them some time to get back on track. My commiserations. Public infrastructure lost. Commiserations also to the Lagos state government. Buses, brand new buses were burnt. Commiserations to the life lost. That was blatant disrespect for life and livelihood. But for us to heal, we must come together and we must speak truth to power.
Two good things.
Yes, Dr. Abati.
The first is Dati Ahmed. You were referring to Dati Ahmed.
Yes.
Making a statement that there wasn't a massacre. Maybe that would be an assignment for the public. Go and find out, check what a massacre is. But what we can say is that even if it was only one life that was lost, one, in our own estimation, that amounts to a massacre.
Yes.
It's unacceptable. Nobody should die because they are protesting. Nobody should die because they want a different situation in Nigeria. So Dr. Dati Ahmed saying, it wasn't a massacre, that's just polemics. Losing one life, the state going against the people is in itself a problem. Second thing is Benjamin Undenyi, that's the spokesperson of the police. He came out yesterday and said tear gas had to be applied at the Lekki toll gate because transportation was affected. The traffic flow was affected and they needed to, free the space so that there will be peace and stability within the arena. Okay, the police have their own functions. Part of their function is to maintain public order. And yes, the right to protest is legitimate. We made that clear yesterday. But at the same time, that right does not extend to disturbing public peace, which in itself will be considered a felony. But what I think is more important in the explanation that has been offered by the police is that all the persons that they refer to as troublemakers who were arrested yesterday and detained, they have been freed. I hope that is a fact. I hope that nobody will come forward and say they are still in police custody because they commemorated second year anniversary of the EndSARS protest. So it's important, as Undenyi said, that those persons have been released because, their rights must be duly respected.